Hey guys, got a great blade for you today. Very tough, very big, very anticipated Benchmade 928. Now this is Warren Osborne design and it'll be his last design for Benchmade as Warren Osborne has passed away. And I was really interested in this blade for a while. You know, if you've watched my most anticipated knives for 2016 video, you know that this was on my list of, hey, I really want to pick this up. There's just a lot of things that I really like about it. I like the steel, I like the handle design, I like the size and weight, I like the blade steel, the blade design and grind. So anyway, just looking at this on paper, there were a bunch of things that I really liked, and so I really wanted to check this one out, and so I'm quite happy to have this one in hand and be able to share it with you. And I've been really enjoying using this blade. There are some things that I'll sort of hit on, but you'll have to wait for those for the detailed examination of the various components here. One other thing that I want to say by way of introduction, and that is with this blade, I'm going to do some comparisons, and I'm going to do that at sort of near the end of the video, before I give my overall impression, but after I go over sort of the various details of the blade and lock and handle. Okay, so be waiting for that, and if you like to see a bunch of knives, and there are, I think, some really strong competitors to this one, so you know, I think if you're looking at this, there are probably a few other knives that you want to look at. And we'll kind of see how this stacks up, okay? Not only for my preferences, but for yours as well. Let's go ahead now and give you the size and weight on this knife before we go over to the tabletop view. All right, so overall we have an 8 3/4 inch knife. In fact, it's a little bit bigger than that at 8 13/16. The blade is basically 3 3/4, and the handle is basically 5 inches. Both of those are just a little, they're actually a 1/16 over on both of those. Now here's the impressive thing, the weight on this is 4.86 ounces. That's nice and light for a blade of this size. You know, once you start getting close to 9 inches, usually you're over the 4-ounce mark, but it's the construction of this that does it. That's one of the things that drew me to this knife. It is a piece of G10 that's been cut out to allow for, you know, the back spacer and the handle scale to be sort of one thing, and then the titanium side screwed onto that. So this kind of construction, same construction that's used on a Strider, I know, does allow this knife to be a little lighter than you would anticipate it to be, which I think is a real win. The other thing is, we always talk about this when we're talking about size and weight. This is a knife that gives you a lot of utility, a lot of strength, a lot of durability, but you normally say, hey, you know, I'm gonna have to carry around a little more heft to get that extra strength and utility, but in this case, you don't. This is a very slim, very light, very easy carrying knife, which is really, really cool. By the way, it does not come with a deep carry clip. I sent an email to Benchmade asking them for that, and sure enough, as has often been said, for free, Benchmade sent that out, and I'm really, really pleased that they did. All right, so there you go, guys. That's the size and weight and introduction on this. Let's go ahead and head over to the tabletop for the rest of the review. Okay guys, here we are nice and close on this Benchmade 928 Proxy. Let me give you the show side there. And we're gonna go over the details on this knife, beginning with the blade, which is pretty well how we always do it. All right, so let's take a look at that blade. There it is, drop point 20 CV, sort of a medium flat grind. Really interesting finish on this. Let me get you close up here so you can see. Notice you can see the grind lines there, and you can see there seems to be a bit of a stonewash slash bead blast there. So it's almost as if they gave it a light stonewash and then a light bead blast as well. And the result is a very toned down blade. You know, this is not a blade that reflects a lot of light, okay? The way the lighting is in here now, this would be blinding you when I angled it the right way, but notice that it's really not doing that. It's really a nicely muted blade. The other thing about this finish is it's a pretty durable finish. It's definitely a working finish, and this blade overall is designed to be a working blade. Look how thick it is. Look how much material is carried out to the tip. And now this is something I'm a little bit let's say this. They've done a good job in this case, but generally I don't like it. This is a fairly thick blade, okay? There's a lot of metal here right down by the edge, and normally I'm not a fan of that. However, they've actually done a pretty decent job of getting this to striking that fine balance where even though this is a thick blade, it will cut pretty nicely. It'll even cut apples reasonably well. Now eventually they will split. Okay, I cut some apples the other day. That seems to be one of the things we like to talk about. This starts the cut quite nicely, but eventually, you know, before you get all the way to the bottom, the apple does split apart on you. So not quite as thin as I generally prefer, but because my experience with the blade has been good, right? I was able to cut everything I wanted to cut. I was able to, you know, get a good edge on this knife. Now I haven't done a really heavy sharpening on it because it just hasn't needed it. 20 CV has great edge retention, but I have honed it a little bit and stropped it. And that's the other aspect that I don't like about thickly ground blades is you often can't get that razor hair popping sharpness, that phone book cutting hair popping. But this one really does well in that department as well. So for all those reasons, I can't really say much bad about this blade. In fact, I've got to say they've actually done pretty well in terms of getting a blade that's really tough. And this is, as you look at it, you know, don't be fooled. This blade is absolutely designed to be as tough and durable as it can be. And they've done that really well, but they've still given you a blade that cuts, which is, to me, the most important thing. Now let's move down here to the plunge grind and the sharpening choil and the flat spot and the choil. This whole area, okay, between here and here, really between here and here, I'm not a fan of, okay? I like the choil, but there's this stupid flat spot and then a sharpening choil cut out in front of that, which really reduces the amount of blade you get. Why not go with a little sharpening choil if you have to do it? But there is a reason for this, and that is when the blade is closed, okay, that flat spot right here is actually serving as a blade stop against the G10 backspacer part over here. Okay, so by the way, that's the same thing that Strider does, and it's for the same reason. So when you see the stupidity on Strider blades and the stupidity on this one, that's why. I don't know, you know, I feel like just put a stop pin in, okay? Like, why are you doing this? But they decided someone in the design process to make the knife stop against the back of the spacer here. And of course you can't have your sharpened edge stopping against that because you're gonna dull it and you're gonna wreck the spacer. So what are you gonna do? Well, you've got to put a flat spot on the blade, and there's the flat spot right there. Okay, not a fan of that particular design choice, not a fan of that way of stopping a blade in general, but there it is. And so I will say this. Overall, I like the knife enough that I'm willing to overlook what I feel like is a bit of a fail on how they've executed that sort of heel of the blade. All right. I think that's pretty well everything that I wanted to cover on the blade. Let's go ahead now and talk about lockup and deployment. Here is an area that the knife actually does pretty well. It is a bearing pivot, okay, caged ball bearings. I don't know if I can show you. They're even hard to see with the naked eye, so you can kind of see in there, you can see those bearings a little bit maybe. Anyway, there are caged bearings in there. It does work fairly well, okay? It's not the smoothest knife that I own, but my main requirement is that when I go to flip the knife open, it opens, and this one definitely does. So that aspect of it is acceptable if it's not totally outstanding, right? If you compare that to something like the 0452, the pivot on this and the action on this is considerably better, okay? There's no doubt. But having said that, there's kind of a difference in design purpose here, okay? This is meant to be a kind of a tougher, harder use knife, and the pivot is not quite as refined as what you're going to see on some other knives that are out there. That said, it does work as you want it to, okay? As I said, for me, I want to be able to flip the knife and I want it to deploy when I do that. And this one does. One interesting thing is, notice I can use the blade stops as a deployment method, but they don't work well and they're rather uncomfortable. So that's not something I do, but if you really, really wanted to, I guess you could go about opening the knife or deploying the knife in that way. Since we're talking about lockup and deployment, let's look at how this knife stops. You've got two big blade stops here, like you see on a lot of ZTs, like you see on Striders, a few other things, and you can see the rounded seats for those blade stops, and you can see that they do seat well against both the G10 and the titanium, so nice and solid. By the way, it does have good solid lockup both side to side and up and down, which is one of the things that we want to see. And of course, when you close the blade, notice, there you go, that pin is not touching, so that can't be stopping it. No, because it's stopped against the back of the spacer here, and there's that flat spot on the blade contacting at the back. So that's how they've achieved that. Now the flipper tab, there's one more detail I want to go over, or two more. The flipper tab is good. As far as I'm concerned, I like a smaller flipper tab. And I like one that's unobtrusive and doesn't look like a giant, thing sticking out the back of the knife. And that's how they've done this one. So definitely a win on the flipper tab itself and on the geometry, right? I like a flipper tab that I can get a hold of and that I can deploy easily. And certainly that is the case with this knife. Now, let me pick on one thing about the action and design overall. Here we have a knife that's designed to be sort of a hard use, overbuilt, super tough, super tactical, take a beating, take a licking and keep on ticking kind of knife. And it's got ball bearings. It seems to me that if you're going to make a knife like this, why not go with Teflon washers? Or why not go with phosphor bronze washers, or even phosphor bronze on Teflon if you want to try to, up that smoothness just a little bit. You're still, with the detent set as well as this is, you're still going to get a knife that performs really well. And there are a number of other Benchmades that have super smooth action. So we know Benchmade has the ability to get a really smooth, really nice action without using bearings. So it's like, why not, if you're making a knife that's designed to be super tough and durable, why not go with the toughest, most durable, most reliable pivot system that you could? And I don't think bearings are that. I think they open themselves to a little more potential dirt and grime and crap and all of that stuff. All right, so that's my one complaint about this. The other one is pertaining to the lock bar insert. So check out the lock bar insert on this. Looks kind of like a little nut in there. What that is an adjustable insert. So you can change how the lock bar interfaces with the blade tang by pivoting this nut, okay, to different surfaces. Now, my question is, why? Okay. One, you've got steel on steel already. So when you do a stainless steel lock bar, the point of that is so that you have steel on steel and you're not going to see the kind of wear that you would expect. So in a knife like this is the WE608, you can see the lock bar insert there and how it interfaces with the blade, and it's not adjustable. And why would it be? Because the whole point of making it steel is so that you're not going to get an excessive amount of wear on that interface, and therefore you don't need the ability to change it that bad. I guess over time you could see some wear and I don't know. To me, it seems like a solution to a problem that no one has. And I've said that before about other features. Not only that, but it's a potential for weakness. Someone's going to take this out and they're going to adjust it wrong, and it's not going to, they're not going to get solid lockup, and they're going to be sending the knife back to Benchmade because it's got blade play or it's got, lock slip or something like that, when it's just because they adjusted it poorly. And I don't know, feels like something where Benchmade just wants to be a little bit different, and so they've done this even though it's not really something that's needed. So there you go. That's lockup and deployment. Now, finally, let's move on to the handle. Oh, by the way, this is kind of a thing for Benchmade, right? Remember the 761 or the Vickers, I'm trying to remember the name of it, the Siebert design. Both of those had adjustable stop pins here at the back to do this, to achieve the same thing as this adjustable lock bar insert, okay? Just seems unnecessary to me. Now, let's move on finally to the handle. And the handle, I think, is a win, guys. There's a lot of things that I want to try and point out here. First off is machined G10 and titanium. Very, very comfortable in hand. Nice and thin, okay? Very lightweight because of the way they've chosen to design this. And so in terms of the construction choices they've made, I really, really like it. You know, they've gone with a type of construction and build that allows for a nice light knife that's also very tough, very reliable, very durable, all things that I want to see. But also, they've made it very comfortable. They've added, you know, 3D machining, which is certainly a value-added feature and does impact the comfort of this knife. It's a very, very comfortable knife in pretty well every grip you could think of. I will say in some grips, obviously, you've got to move your hand further down the handle because you've got the flipper mechanism sticking out there, serving as a nice front choil. I also really like, from an ergonomic standpoint, that finger choil. You know, you guys know, I've talked about this before, I really like the ability to choke up on a knife. Plus, the nice thick blade stock and lack of swedge on the top here allows me to get a good purchase with my thumb and have a comfortable surface for pushing on as I'm doing different kinds of more detailed cutting tasks, all right? So, the design overall, I definitely like. The materials, I like the choice to do the piece of G10 that also serves as the backspacer. I know, again, this is a Strider-esque design, and I like that about Strider. Now, I like the handle on this much, much better than any Strider I've ever handled, and I've handled quite a few of them. I don't find them that comfortable in hand, but this one is very, very ergonomically friendly. Okay, now notice on this side, okay, so over here we've got these screws, right? Well, on a lot of knives, you just take these screws and screw them into the titanium scale. However, if you know that titanium is softer than steel, you also know that maybe screwing into it with a steel screw is not the best plan. And so what Benchmade has done here has put little collars or inserts here that the screws can go into. That is perfect. That's awesome. That does make the knife tougher. It makes it more durable. It makes me, as someone who may have to take this knife apart and service it, feel a lot better about doing that because I don't have to be scared to death that I'm going to ruin the threads on this titanium lock side. So huge win on the construction there by going with the inserts rather than just screwing those screws into titanium, which I don't really like, even though I know I like some knives that do it, and I don't think it's the worst thing that any knife could ever do, but it's great when someone pays enough attention to not do that. Furthermore, I do have the deep carry clip. It's two position clip, so left side or right side, tip up carry, definitely a win on that. However, it comes with the standard split arrow clip, and I wasn't a big fan of that, so I sent an email to Benchmade, and they very promptly sent me out the bent over deep carry clip, which I really, really like. By the way, I also asked them for a clip for my Crooked River, which they were happy to send me as well. Now, since we got the Crooked River in here, why don't we talk a little bit about comparative knives, okay? I want a knife that's gonna be tough and tactical and awesome and reliable. And yes, the Proxy definitely fits the bill. However, there are quite a few others that also fit the bill that probably don't cost as much. Here's one from Benchmade that happens to be a favorite of mine, the Crooked River. But there are quite a few others, and I'm gonna pull some in. Certainly, it's hard to talk about an overbuilt frame lock knife without talking about the 0560, which is a great knife, very durable, very awesome. Probably, I don't know. It's a bit of a debate, but probably a little more comfortable in hand. I just find this knife just molds to your hand. The 3D machining on this is done differently. So it's just this nice constant arc on both sides, and that is really, really comfortable. So 0560 certainly is a competitor, I would say, to the 928, the Crooked River that I just showed you. Of course, it's not a tie frame lock, I'm aware of that. But we're talking about ZTs, and especially ZTs that are very lightweight for their size. You do have to pull in the 0452. Now this, of course, is the M390 in blue, but this is a phenomenal knife. It weighs a fair bit less even than the Proxy. Both of them, though, share in common that you've got the titanium on one side and another material, in this case carbon fiber. Love that as a design choice. Carbon fiber is super strong, as is G10. There's no reason to do stainless steel liners on these. You're not sacrificing anything in terms of strength. All right. But yeah, there's a competitive option, absolutely. I'm not going to give you prices on all of these, but they're all kind of in that ballpark. Now, talking about tactical knives, here's one. This is the WE Knives 608. Again, a big knife, interesting blade shape. Really got a lot of features going on the WE Knives. I really think, you know, in terms of value for dollar, you're getting a lot from these WE Knives, just because, you know, the amount of detail and sort of interesting stuff going on in these is really good. Slightly different from a design standpoint, but again, very close in price. I think those are just under 300 and this is 250, so for like 40 bucks more, right? Let's see, what else have we got? Of course, if we are just talking about straight up practicality, and certainly this is a very practical, usable knife. You got to include the Manix 2 XL in this discussion, as well as the knife that I always bring in when we're talking about a hard use or tactical blade, the Recon 1. I'm a huge fan of the Recon 1. Just because it's extremely good in terms of value. You've got a great steel on there, comfortable, tough as nails, and really, you know, if you're thinking a knife that you're going to really use and abuse and just put through its paces, do you feel more comfortable doing that with a $100 knife or a $250 knife? You know, I think for most of us, if we're honest, we're going to be more inclined to beat on the more budget-friendly blade. One more here that I've got to say is just a great knife. There are a few more of these, by the way, at knifeworks.com I saw recently. Not the carbon fiber, but I think there are some G10, or not maybe G10, but some FRN blades available. I want to say Knife Center has an exclusive with G10 too on these Rat Model 1s. Anyway, Rat 1, again, very hard use knife. That's a knife that can really be beat on and hold up well. Now it's not, you know, the size and weight and the refinements that you're going to get on a knife like this are not there, but it's still a good knife. So there you go, guys. Those are some comparative or competitive options to the 928 Proxy, and that's one of the challenges I think this knife has. There's a lot out there to compete with, and the price point on this is pretty high, and the look, some people are going to be put off by this rather distinctive looking knife. Now, I don't mind it. In fact, I kind of like it, but I tend to be drawn to knives that seem to be doing something a little different, and this one seems to be doing that. Overall, let me say this. This is a knife that is a very high-end production knife. You know, you in order to get the same kind of fit and finish and quality levels and material levels, you're definitely in the realm of zero tolerance, in the realm of even other high-end production hinderers, striders, those kinds of things. And so if you want, you know, if you're drawn to those kind of knives, especially if you like the construction of a Strider but don't think they carry it out very well, I think there's a lot of things borrowed from Strider here, only done much better. Okay, I would take this over any Strider any day of the week. I know there's some Strider fanboys out there, don't get too mad at me, but in terms of a reliable, hard use, tactical, you know, EDC knife that's just very versatile, that can do a lot and really be a reliable, well-built knife, there's no question that this one definitely fits the bill. Yeah, there were some things I didn't like about it, but in reality, as I've carried and used this knife, it has not failed me at all, right? Everything I've tried to do, everything I've wanted to tackle with this knife, it has handled just fine. So there you go. Overall, I really like this knife. I definitely think that Benchmade has done a great job with this one. And I'm really been enjoying it. And I think anyone, if you're not put off by the look, and I know some people won't like the way it looks, but if you like Benchmade and you like the way this looks, I don't think there's anything that I would say would be bad enough to not buy it. I know I don't like this in the blade, but that's really the biggest issue that I have with this whole knife. There you go, guys. I know this has been a long one. There's a lot of detail to cover here. Thanks for sticking with me, and we will talk to you later.